Crowd. Good evening and welcome to DocuSign. We're so pleased to have you here to join us. And I'm Dan Springer. I'm the CEO of DocuSign for all of 10 weeks. So just so you know, I'm new, so it could be any tough time. But we're really pleased to have you here. And I'm going to take very brief comments. No slides, don't worry. I'll leave that to someone else. But I just wanted to give you a very, very brief introduction to DocuSign since you're on your tour here and you're learning a lot about different technologies. We thought we'd give you a little brief introduction to our company. So DocuSign was the early leader in what was called e-signatures. That was the early innovation in our space, and that was over about 15 years ago. And that has really morphed into what we now call digital transaction management. And e-signature is what probably many of you are familiar. Let me just quick show of hands. Who's done an electronic signature? The vast majority. So that was the part, and it was a very strong consumer proposition. But DTM is really more of a business. Digital transaction management is an opportunity for companies to drive the digital transformation of their businesses. And if you think about it in the ag space, I'll give you just two quick examples. We have examples where we have folks who have problems where they need to get signatures and do business transactions in a field far away from telephony. So if you're trying to buy a tractor and you have to work with someone who's trying to purchase that tractor from you, or you're trying to buy a tractor from someone else, and you have an iPad but you don't have connectivity, you can actually, with DocuSign, do that whole transaction. And then when you get back to having a Wi-Fi connection, you can actually load that up to the cloud and make that transaction work. That's an example of something we do. We also see in simple sales organizations, sort of B2B transactions, where people use DocuSign for all their contracts and allows them to be much more efficient. And they can actually reduce significant amounts of time that's invested in driving their sales. So those are kind of some of the examples that businesses would use within the ag space would use DocuSign. And we're an organization that's very, very focused on innovation. And I think you're going to see a lot of that as you spend time in the broadly defined Silicon Valley. Although I just heard your itinerary, and people go all the way up to Davis and all the way down to the desk. We don't normally consider that Silicon Valley. You're getting the broadest definition of Silicon Valley, which I think is wonderful. And I think you'll see that there's a lot of companies that are not software companies, but are still driving innovation. I think it's the fantastic part about your tour. But here at DocuSign, we are fundamentally a software business. And so for us, innovation means building fantastic new products that can allow you to drive efficiency and effectiveness in your business. So we're thrilled to have you guys here. We'd love to welcome you on this first day of your tour. There's a bunch of people from DocuSign. We're going to be milling around if you have further questions, but we didn't want to make this so much of a commercial for DocuSign, really more an opportunity for you guys to have just a piece of Silicon Valley on your tour. So don't be shy, come up and ask us questions. We're the folks that have these badges as opposed to the ones you have on. And thank you and welcome to DocuSign.
Good evening. I know I saw a lot of you here this morning already, and I think this is more for the people that I haven't seen today. Thank you so much, and good evening, and thank you for coming. My name is Denise Cardozo, and I'm the Executive Director of Silicon Valley Forum. For those of you who don't know, Silicon Valley Forum is a 34-year-old nonprofit organization that really functions as a center of information and connections to the global technology and startup ecosystem. We create content and organize over 70 events per year. These could be anything like customized immersion programs like what we're doing here today with the AgTech program, to pitch events, and we also organize large conferences focused on the latest technology trends. Our signature Women in Tech Festival sports our female leaders and founders, and our annual Visionary Awards honors those that have made the greatest contributions to technology as we know it. Today, we are thrilled to host over 100 delegates this week in our global AgTech Immersion program and have an incredible 17 countries represented from Latin America, United Kingdom, Asia, New Zealand, Turkey, and many more. Today, we visited 4 innovation hubs right here in San Francisco, and met experts in cellular agriculture, drones, AgTech investments, and food traceability. Tomorrow, our delegation will visit a working farm of the future and meet with thought leaders from UC Davis, who runs one of the largest university AgTech initiatives. And on the third day, we will meet with 13 AgTech experts at a world-famous berry farm and at the campus of CSU at Monterey Bay. As a special edition this Thursday, we have organized a full-day conference, The Seeds of Our Future, which you can see up there. We will have thought leaders from all over the world discuss the challenges and opportunities in AgTech. If you have not registered for the conference, we still have some tickets available, so we encourage you to go to our website at siliconvalleyforum.com and click on the links and purchase your ticket. Thank you so much to DocuSign and L'Atelier for supporting this edition, and thank you so much for coming.
Is anyone can hear me? Is it working well? Yes. Okay, so we'll just cut this one. So, thank you for everyone. We are first glad to welcome you from L'Atelier. So my name is Mathieu Sol. I'm a Senior Strategic Analyst for L'Atelier BNP Paribas, which is the innovation lab for the banks. And thanks to the help of AgTech, which is in the back, we managed, in fact, tonight to gather our friend with ASI Forum, with DocuSign 2, and a couple of startups that you will have in the back. So make sure on that. So today we are glad because 1 year ago we started to have the first meetup in San Francisco regarding AgTech. We released, in fact, a study regarding data-driven farming more than 1 year ago. And when we knew, in fact, our friend from SD Forum was welcoming so many people from a lot of places around the world, we were like, maybe it's a good idea, maybe to have an update and to give you some insight. So what I will do, I will take probably 20 to 25 minutes just to give you an overview of what we are seeing in the future of agriculture. I will take some numbers about what is the business today in the US, take a couple of examples on that, and from there after I will have the chance to welcome Marion from Climate Corporation that will present to you what they have, in fact, what they're working on, what is they're releasing, and we'll have a couple of startups after and a couple of members from ASI Forum that will present what they're doing. So tonight, the idea is very to connect and to network all together. So you have, of course, the delegation from ASI Forum and a couple of dozens of people from more the Silicon Valley and the Bay Area, and it will be a lot of fun. So, just in a nutshell, I will go very quickly regarding L'Atelier. So we are the innovation lab, in fact, for BNP Paribas. We were created 11 years ago in San Francisco, and the idea from the banking perspective is to understand in fact, many different things, how different industries are performing and will evaluate, and what would be in fact the kind of consequences from a financial services perspective. Regarding AgTech, we'll discuss it at the end, but there is a lot of things going on in insurance, the way we are doing payments, the way we are doing credit, thanks to the development of the agricultures, and there is a lot of impacts for large international players like us. So what I will start with is a couple of numbers from the US market, especially for the ones that are coming from abroad. Just in a nutshell, we took some numbers basically from the last census in the US from the USDA. There is around 3 million people working in the farming business in the US. It's around 2 million farms. And there is a lot of such farms that are still family business. What is interesting, and you know that better than me, is the agriculture business in total, if you're adding not just the farming, but the agro-business, is representing around almost $1 trillion in the US. It's more than 5% of the GDP. So it's a large business that have many different implications and a lot of different players in this field. And regarding where this, I would say, business coming on, especially on the farming one, obviously the biggest region in the US is California. So all these small dots you're seeing in blue is representing $20 million of revenue. So you're seeing, in fact, a very large concentration in California. The other one is Texas, Iowa, Nebraska. And is not a surprise. You will see a lot of these startups, in fact, in this space, also coming from the same places. And Silicon Valley is kind of very unique because it's also in California, and you have a lot of interactions. Historically, I would say from the US, the capital of agriculture was in between, I would say, Sacramento and Fresno. There is a lot of stuff coming. For the ones that don't know, in fact, Fresno was the first, in fact, in the city that were creating the first tractor. So there is a lot of history behind that, but California is representing a very large portion of that. And also something maybe from our friend from South America, regarding the size of farms, there is different culture about agricultures. In the US specifically, I would say 2% of the farms are accounting for more than 1/3 of the total production share. So there is a lot of potential concentration. After the average size is around a little more than 1,000 acres. It's in hectares for the European, it's a little more than 100 hectares per exploitation. So there is a lot of potential interest, a lot of people involved, and that's what we'll discuss tonight. So the way I will present it, I will just give you a couple of challenges and the way today some startups and some new players are trying to solve them. In general, basically we need to feed a lot of people by 2050. Everyone is involved in that. The estimation is between 9.5 to 10 billions of people around 2050, and one of the biggest challenges for everyone, including in the US, but abroad too, is the question of could we have a sustainable model regarding agriculture. And obviously also everything that could simplify the life of farmers, anything from the exploitations to better care of the cattle, whatever, is something that is in mind. But I would say the first one probably is what is today at stake for a lot of the businesses. So at Atelier, what we are liking and doing a lot for understanding the kind of new space is this kind of mapping. So we did in fact specify for AgTech in fact different fields. There is also people that did other ones. What we are in general incorporating, everything from irrigation to water management. You have very well-known names around that. Everything from crop and soil management on that. On the right side is more weather forecast and farm management. So you have a lot of today new applications and new way to better manage your farms. I would say it's like the Intuit for farming, more or less. And you have also very specific one like cattle management. I don't know if it's in the crowd, someone from Growth Control. I know it was part of the delegation for the forum. It happened, we met in Brazil a couple of years ago, and I think it's now in the US. But you have a couple of very specific startups that are doing basically Fitbits for cows or this kind of stuff, so to better understand the health of the animals. And you have something I think is the biggest place, and I think our friend from Kleiner Corporation will discuss about that too. A lot of things involving data analytics, predictive analytics, different ways in fact to measure what's going on and to have what we call a data-driven approach regarding farm. And the last one is kind of evolving space. So historically there was a lot of very specified startups in the robotics space, some others in the drones, and there were historic, I would say, players who are in the satellite and imagery businesses. The borders, I would say, of the frontier are evolving because a lot of the players that were doing drones are now specifically just working on the analytics part, on the imagery, and you have a lot of stuff going. So I will take a couple of examples just to illustrate them. So the first one is a company called Quantify Ag. So I will just describe it with the sound. I will just see with the video. So I will just comment on it. So it's a company based in Nebraska. What they are doing, in fact, is they are trying to quantify, in fact, for the cows. Basically, is there any sign of diseases, maybe bad behavior? And the way they are doing it is they are putting, in fact, RFID tags to better understand, in fact, which cows could have some issues. So they are basically analyzing vital signs, for the cows. And if you're, in fact, understanding one cause is maybe having a trouble, you have much more time to react, in fact, and to change it. So there is a lot of interest, obviously, from the cattle and livestock businesses on that, and I assume, in fact, in Brazil or Argentina, there are exactly the same kind of challenge today. So it's one way, in fact, in fact, it's almost what we are looking today in the US in the human health, in fact, sectors that is more or less evolving to the animal sectors. Any way to better analyze what's going on from a pure health perspective. The second one I wanted to talk about, it's another business. It's more like crop management software. You have a very interesting player called AgriList, which is helping if you want to manage tomatoes, basil, different kind of crops. What they are doing, in fact, is helping you, in fact, managing that. Interestingly, and I think for this product too, they started in the US. They were based in New York. Today, they are part of an accelerator in Ireland because they have the opportunity to work with the large players. It's also to see at this stage there is a lot of crossover and cross-borders interest, in fact, not just in the US, but some companies, in fact, could work in different areas. The last one sorry, not the last one, but one of them that is very well known and based in the Silicon Valley. It's called Farmers Business Networks. Very interesting company. Basically, they are bringing more or less the principle of cooperative, digital co-op, they're calling it. They're putting, in fact, all together more than 3,500 farmers and farms, in fact, and they are sharing a lot of their data anonymously. And as a farmer, you could first benchmark what you're doing, and you will have a lot of recommendation after regarding different the crops and stuff, etc. So they started in the space to have like more a peer-to-peer approach. So basically saying to farmers, you can connect compared to other folks outside the US. It's working not outside, sorry, outside their own domestic market, and it's working very well. They raised a lot of money, more than $90 millions of dollars, and they are today, in fact, seeing there is a lot of interest from the marketplace perspective to work on data and better data. One others that we invited last year that is developing quite well is more in the satellite in imagery space. It's called Robotics. What they are doing, in fact, using drones but satellites, etc., they could do a lot of analysis from that. So I assume that during this week you have a couple of companies that you will see. So they are looking at different stuff from the nitrogens, doing crop performance benchmarking, also able to manage some zone creations. And that's a space that a lot of people have been looking at. There is a lot of new technologies involved. The cost is declining a lot in terms of the cost of capturing the data. And so at the moment you have a lot of imagery and different photography and pictures. You could have a lot of very basic interest. So that's a space that you will see probably a lot of players. There is a historical player from satellites imagery and some other from drone perspective. We have one today that is with us from our from friends from Parrot. But you have different, in fact, people involved. Last example, and after I will move to what is interesting also in the cross sectors, is around the farm management. So Kleiner is also a company based in the Bay Area. What they're helping you is everything from the operation to the financials to a lot of this stuff you have to do to manage on a day-to-day basis your farms. It's a SaaS model, software as a service. You could do a lot of things, and you're also seeing, in fact, a lot of incremental stuff. What is interesting with all the different examples or iteration I took, it's a lot of companies that started probably a couple of years ago that are just scaling, in fact, because they are venture capitalist money, but they are just scaling today mainly in the US. And a lot of these companies are looking also to expand abroad. So it could be a good timing, in fact, for a lot of people to see what could work or not first outside and seeing maybe some relationship or different distribution model for them. What I will finish with is more the data-driven farming approach, just to illustrate to you the lot of impact, in fact, it has on different industries. So we did, in fact, this infography with the study last year. It's around connected tractors, the different robotics you could involve, etc. Just to illustrate very basically for people that are not in the farming business, what basically the future of agriculture is looking like. And there is obviously a lot of technology involved, and the cloud, I would say, everything regarding analytics, everything that you could put data in the cloud and doing analytics on it could have potential value. So there is a lot of, I think there are still kind of in between. Today there is a lot of people in the Silicon Valley regarding artificial intelligence, different way to do better data analytics, and there is still, I would say, the farming fundamentals, what basically is useful or not. And I think we are still at this time, but we are looking, more data is helping if we can do actions with it, so we're doing insight, and there is still a lot of things that you will see, in fact, just are adjusting at this stage. The good news is the technology is working now, there is the interest from the farmers, and so it's just a question of time, but the deployment. From an investment perspective, so we took some numbers from our founder friends. We just reshape it because some of the categories, especially the, I would say everything regarding food tech and e-commerce for food was maybe not in it. So we just took some of the numbers they released a couple of weeks ago from 2016. From their numbers, it's around $1.8 billion of investment from venture capitalist investment the last year. So it was declining a little compared to the previous year, but it's still important numbers. And in terms of number of deals, just to give you an idea, it was around 382 deals in these different categories we took. Obviously, the biggest one is considering part of AgTech, everything regarding biotechnology is still, because in terms of amount of money. But what we're looking at, and we'll take some examples, the farm management sensing is representing a lot of significant advancements, and you have a lot of new players very specialized in some niche. And after you have robotics, supply chain management to track for security purposes or from safety purposes, etc. A lot of things. So I will just finish by 3 or 4 examples with the different industries involved. So I mentioned to you as latterly, in fact, our business is to look at different future of a specific industry, but also the correlation or interactions, interconnected industry with the different ones. So I mentioned for agriculture, you have a lot of investment for telecom, retail banking, insurance and energy, and I will just focus on some of them. So the first example I wanted to take regarding the retail, so there is a lot of things going on between direct to consumers, etc. One very interesting, I would say, example from the Bay Area is a company called Imperfect Produce. The pitch is very easy. You have a lot of produce that are not very well, in fact, looking like, I would say, from a consumer perspective, they're in the retail store. So today they're not basically in the stores. What they're looking at is taking these products that are wasted today and sending it, in fact, to different consumers or families, in fact, that want like. The way they're doing it is 1 box a week. So you could have either vegetables or fruits or whatever you want, and they're sending you, in fact, these imperfect products. It's a very interesting example because from a farmer perspective, today he has to waste almost 20% of his production because of that, and it's basically a second market that he could find interesting new way in terms of distribution to do that. So it's a good first phase. The second one is regarding insurance. So I took the example of Precision Oak, which were doing drones, which is now one the imagery business that developed also both agriculture and insurance stuff, especially the one I wanted to mention. So it's for insurance one, it's hail damage on crops and the wind damage on crops. Today you have a lot of ways to, from an insurance perspective, to take the picture before and to do the analysis after. There is a lot of interest from insurers to do this kind of technologies because if you have to cover a land that is thousands of acres, etc., it's a lot of manpower today to do it. If you could take images and doing the, let's say, before and after an event analysis, it would be much more easier. So you have a lot of players like that are working with insurer or looking at different ways that you could insure, in fact, the crops or the management of the farm. One I like a lot in the more fintech and financial services space. So you have a couple of illustrations around the world. This one is a smaller one called the Harvest Sports. They just raised a little more than $2 million. They're based in California too. What is it? Basically, it's a peer-to-peer marketplace for any kind of instruments, tractors, etc. that you will need for your farm, for equipment. So it's more like either credit, leasing of equipment. The idea, in fact, is a peer-to-peer marketplace. So as a farmer, you have probably a couple of stuff that you're using, maybe vehicles, etc. You're using a couple of weeks a year, so you're not using it anymore, and you could have a way to basically monetize it or use the assets that is underutilized on that. That's something that we saw in other industry. In the car industry, you have Gateron or other players that are moving, in fact, this kind of equipment leasing and equipment offers. So I just took the example of harvest equipment. So you can see there are some of them for rent, some of them you can rent them as per week, some of them are selling. It's just one way, in fact, to better integrate and differentiate from them. And the last example I wanted to show, so it's a company that started in the US, but is expanding, in fact, and working mainly in Kenya today and in Africa. It's around energy, so it's using, in fact, solar power and solar panels, to be better at doing water pump. So what they are developing, in fact, what you see on the left, you have the solar panel and you have an installation that could help you, in fact, to have irrigations in the field. And what is the tricky part, in fact, if you know a little about Africa, etc., you have a lot of issue about access to energy. If you're using fuel or generators, this costs a lot of money. So the best way, in fact, they could package it is with solar panel because you could have a better way to save it. So they're just expanding and they're raising some money. They are able, in fact, for some farmers to raise, in fact, by more than 300% the kind of average crop, in fact, yield on that. So thanks to water, basically, they are able to that. And they are just changing the business model for a lot of farmers that could develop much more quality, in fact, and also more revenue for their farms thanks to that. So it's exactly this kind of space that there is a lot of innovation coming. It's not just about farming, it's also around financing, energy, different, I would say, ingredients that you need, in fact, to do the business. And it's something I think we'd like to share with you. So if you want, we have on the website for L'Atelier the study we did. It's free and included. It's called Data-Driven AgTech. You have my call, if you want to talk tonight and discuss about this space, we're more than happy to do so. I would like to thank again Agathe in the back, because she's the one that organized what we are doing today, so she did a very good job, and congratulations to her. I can take probably 5 minutes if you have any questions, and after I will move to other one. So I don't know if there is any questions at this stage. No?
What is your role in all this? I don't understand.
So our role, in fact, from L'Atelier perspective, the DNA of L'Atelier was started 40 years ago in Paris. We have now 3 offices, Paris, Shanghai, and San Francisco. And the idea, in fact, is to understand our DNA is understanding the disruptive technology and the impact on business model for large corporations in many industries. So the idea is really to look at what is going, what's next, in fact, in the specific sectors, and understanding from this kind of innovation perspective what could be interesting, either from BNP Paribas perspective, so financial services, either for very large clients in different fields. It could be agriculture, cooperative, etc. What would be the best stuff? The idea from L'Atelier is helping, in fact, large groups and corporations evolve, in fact, in this space to look at more what are the opportunities that they could develop, and also identifying the threat. And L'Atelier is instrumental, helping our clients to do so.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions? Yes?
Yeah, Mathieu, you jumped right in and went through a lot of different companies and technologies. We have 7.4 billion people today in the world, going to 9.6 billion people in the next 30 years. A huge, huge number. What are the ag trends you're seeing to feed another 2.2 billion mouths in the next 30 years?
So I think a lot of this, in fact, it's more the example I took the last one, because I think a lot of the issue I would say is, I suppose, the extension of the population, but it will be localized. It will not be in the US, it will be mainly in Africa and Asia for the next billions of people that we will be adding. So the issue or the challenge for everyone is helping, in fact, local farmers or a local family being able to sustain basically to their own nurture. So I think everything that is helping farmers, basically everything you need as fundamental, but access to waters, access to energy, access to markets is very important topics. In fact, to access to distributions in the lots of those markets, everything that is facilitating that from this perspective will be something helpful. In fact. So in fact, startups will be potentially helpful in technology. So there's a lot of international groups that are involved. All the World Bank, FAO, etc., are already involved to understand the kind of economics and how they could develop that. But I think technology could bring a lot of value. You have a lot of famous examples, especially in Africa or Asia, regarding the prices of the market that you could have access thanks to your mobile phone. You have some examples from M-Pesa, some other. But it could be very basic stuff, access to information, so the price on the local markets, maybe the weather condition, etc. And a lot of, on a day-to-day basis, as a farmer, I can do better thanks to different basic technologies. So I think you will have a lot of things that we'll see from Silicon Valley that are very, I would say, high-tech in terms of imagery, a lot of implication, but on a local basis, you will have a lot of more basic stuff that will have much more impact on a day-to-day basis for a lot of people. Yeah?
Do you see any trend for urban farming, or there's a lot of buzzwords around that, people growing themselves in cities and stuff like this?
So, can you repeat the first part of the question?
Do you see any trends of urban farming?
Yeah. So we saw, in fact, a couple of startups and new players that are trying to develop that. At the moment, in terms of penetration, is quite low. There is a lot of interest for a lot of people to have like kind of sustainable city. There is also, like, from a personal point of view, some people who like to have maybe their small garden, I would say, in their apartment, etc. There is also more into with the containers, so this kind of culture. So there is a lot of interest in that. Is, I would say, answering to some of the challenges, but not everything. So it will grow. After it's just a question of penetration, it's still very low at the moment. Yes?
As you say, the global growth is important as we outlined. How do you see these companies grow? What are their key challenges?
Yeah. So I think one of the first one for the key challenges is understanding the distribution model. today, because I think there is a lot of technology involved. They are designing very interesting stuff, but they don't know first, very complicated to market it in different states, in different countries. The markets, in fact, and you better know that than me, are very specific or domestic. You're not doing exactly the same kind of distribution channels in Europe or in France, for example, as in the US, and I'm sure it's not the same in Brazil. So first one is access to the end client. Second one I would say is for a lot of the early stage startups, and I think what is very instrumental, they have some ideas about the technologies that could be used in the space. The West Silicon Valley sometimes is working, is applying some technologies that develop in other sectors and trying to apply it to others. There is a lot of things around AI and imagery, etc., that maybe could be relevant or not. They need to have, I would say, direct conversation with, I would say, real business people and farmers to do so. So I think distribution and the second one on that. Regarding the funding, I think we are in an interesting time because all the large corp and even large agribusiness are looking, in fact, to potentially into investment. So I'm not sure it's a very big constraint today for the space. But the first one I would say is will be probably the internationalization. We are just at the first wave that we are seeing that are looking at different markets, and the US one is already a big one, so it's not an issue. But Brazil, Argentina, etc. We're just looking, in fact, to realize that some of the solution could be internationalized, but no one did it before, in fact, in this way. So it's probably a good time to see if there is a cross-border or some cross-fertilizations, and I think it's part of what you're doing and what you raised for some of you today. It's because there is a lot of interest, in fact, to interact between different countries and different geographies. I will take one last questions. Yes?
Matthew, I hate to focus on the very first slide, but I
Yeah.
don't know if I saw it wrong, but you said 2.1 million farms employ 3.1 million people.
Yeah.
That means 50% of American farms only have 2 employees on it?
Yeah, there is a lot of family business still. So it's equivalent of full-time on that, yeah. But there is still a lot of farms, in fact, that don't have so many people on it, correct? Yeah. Or even they are not full-time on the farm.
Either that or you're measuring way too many farms in the US that don't actually...
It was 2.1 million. We took the number from USDA. Yeah. But you have exactly I took in fact the French reference, but you have some kind of similarities in some other countries. You have a lot of, I would say, individual farming, and after you have very large groups that are owning, in fact, a lot of farms or having dedicated people for that. Yeah.
That may not include contract labor either.
Yeah, no, it's a way that is defining, in fact, so it's more the census as the way it's designed. It's people that are full-time employed, in fact, as farmers as their main day-to-day job. Yeah. Okay, so thank you, everyone. I would like to welcome now Mark that will talk about private corporations. Yeah.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Silicon Valley. Hopefully got a chance to get out today and see some of the place. It's an interesting place. I've been here for 20 years now. This is my 20th year working here in Silicon Valley. I've worked for big companies, small companies. I had my own startup for a number of years. Did some work with Sun Microsystems early on. I built Java on mobile devices, deployed that all over the world. My startup was acquired into Zynga before they IPO'd. I saw that through IPO. Kind of the birth of the analytics-based business, if you will. Spent some time at Yahoo, overseeing their mobile catalog, and about 2 years, now almost to the day, I became CTO, Chief Technology Officer, here at Kleiner Corporation. Our office is just a couple of blocks that way. I say our office, we have offices here in San Francisco, Seattle, St. Louis, Chicago, and Morton, Illinois as well. Sao Paulo as well. Yeah, Tallinn, Estonia is the newest one. Yeah, that's right. Obviously, I brought some of my colleagues with me this evening to keep me honest. That's actually me. I'm the short one in that photo. So I mentioned my technology background, but the interesting thing about me is while I've spent 20 years here in technology in Silicon Valley, I actually grew up on a farm. My mom and dad still live on that same farm. He still has that same tractor, still has that same baler. He did sell that pickup in the background a few years ago. I mention that because it's a little bit of a metaphor for climate itself. So if you're familiar at all with Climate Corporation, if you're in this space, you probably are. A lot of people talk about us being the one unicorn in the AgTech startup space. Monsanto acquired us not quite 3 years, a little between 2.5, 3 years ago, for a better part of $1 billion. The company has gone through several changes in its life cycle. It started out as sort of a mathematical applied weather system, got into crop insurance, eventually made the move into agronomic advisors and agronomic models, which led to the eventual acquisition by Monsanto, which is all well and good, but of course, you know, it's great to have that kind of an exit as a startup, but after that, you actually have to build a business, right? So we've been out that now for a couple of years. Our mission: help all the world's farmers sustainably increase their productivity with digital tools. That's really what it's about. At its heart, Kleiner is a data science company. We aggregate a very large data set, apply data science to it. We also have a lot of traditional sciences. We have soil hydrologists, plant phenologists, soil experts, hydrologists, you name it. We have it to build agronomic models and apply our data sets to those models. Our belief, and this is important, I heard the earlier question about how do we feed the next 2 billion people on the planet. And this is coming from a company that's owned by a pretty serious seed company, right? And large investment in biotech. But we believe that the next breakthrough in ag will not be driven by genetics or equipment, but rather in utilizing data to optimize decision making. And if you really think about that, and my dad is a perfect example of this, how do we make decisions on our farms today, for the most part? Experience.
Your neighbor.
Your neighbor is a big one. You're right. Either in confidence or because you're competing with your neighbor, right? We run into a lot of growers that don't want their neighbor to know what they're doing. It's pretty funny. It's driven by your agronomist, your dealer, it's recommendations, new products, things like that. But it's not necessarily driven by quantifiable data, right? Now the irony is, most of our equipment, our modern equipment, has had data for 10 years. We've got customers that have been pulling data files off their equipment for 10 years, and what do they do with those data files? I saw you nod your head. They put them on a thumb drive, they put them on a hard drive. Sorry? Do you know what do our customers do with those data files?
Almost nothing.
Almost nothing. That's the answer. So we've been pulling data for 10 years, we put it on a hard drive, and we do almost nothing with it. Our company stands to change all that. How do we take those data sets, how we start to apply modern data science techniques, machine learning, deep learning, and start to draw out and quantify the different effects of these decisions. I put this up here. This is literally a picture snapped of a whiteboard in our office by a man by the name of Kip Tom, who runs an operation out of Indiana, Tom Farms. You may have seen him in the press lately. He was in the running to be the ag secretary. He didn't make it, but he's a pretty decent friend of mine. This is a picture of his operation and the complexity of it. Not the largest operation by means, but a pretty good sized operation. And so if you see all the different constituents there, he's got airplanes taking imagery, he's got drones taking imagery, he's using satellite imagery. He's obviously got a link there to his fertilizer company that's bringing in his fertilizer product. He's got his grain storage system. He's got trucking. He's got on-the-ground folks doing scouting, soil testing, all those sorts of things. He's got connected sensors in the field. He's got his field equipment connected. He's got some amount of his lands under irrigation, so he's got irrigation pivots. Those are generally have censored and computer controlled. He's got all the application. All that data is basically coming into a cloud somewhere. Now, the way he has it drawn, this is sort of an abstraction. A lot of these different data sources are by different companies, right? So that data is going into different clouds in different places. It's not all in one place. KIP runs Climate Field View, our product, to start to get a handle on all this data and get it into one place, so we can start to use it. But you see some of his other partners on the right. He uses Granular for their ERP system to control and really get a sense of his profitability. SST, obviously he's got banks in there controlling financing. He's got a variety of suppliers, accountants, independent consultants. And then you see, I think it's funny, he drew these at Chicago Mercantile Exchange up here in a very detailed box. That's how he sells his product, right? It's how he makes a living and runs his operation. So it's a great picture because you don't need a very big operation in ag today to get this level of complexity, right? Now Kip manages this because he has a pretty big operation, so he has somebody dedicated to, he has like actually a couple full-time IT people just to manage this operation. But think of the person that's running even 1,000 acres, 5,000 acres. They don't have the capability to do that sort of thing. That's where Kleiner comes in. We start off with data acquisition. Really, that's where we started with the problem. You have to get your hands on the data. How do we do it? I should have brought one with me. We have a device we call the Field View Drive. It's about this big around. It plugs into the CAN bus diagnostic port on a piece of farm equipment. It could be a tractor, whatever implement the tractor is connected to that bus, harvester, in-season application, etc. And what that device does is it streams the data coming off of that bus over Bluetooth to an iPad that sits in the cab. The iPad runs what we call our Field View Cab app. That app does real-time visualization of the data that's coming off the equipment. So, for example, I'm sure you're familiar with some precision planting equipment, planters which have row-by-row shutoffs, row-by-row GPS. Maybe you're doing multi-hybrid. It's a planter capable of planting different types of seeds via a map. So all that data is coming across on the bus, and that's actually visualized in real time on the iPad. So you can watch the tractor go around the field in the cab, and it's also showing you every skip the planter does, double, misses. It's showing downforce problems if you're running into downforce, if you have variability in your ground. And so the first step of digitizing that farmer starts right in the cab. Starts in the cab, how do we acquire that data? When it gets visualized on the iPad, it actually gets streamed to our cloud and stored. We have additional agreements with third parties where we have cloud-to-cloud field data transfer. You may have seen we have an agreement with John Deere. We're the only company that can wirelessly connect to their wireless data server and their new tractors. We also have an agreement to pull data out of on John Deere, and that actually works both ways. We have various other agreements with other parties in ag that allow them to export data out of their system into ours and vice versa. And then the third option is manual upload. So if you have that hard drive with 10 years worth of data on it, you can actually upload that data into our back-end system. The reason for that, obviously, is greater analysis, right? So we have more years of data, more data to analyze, better recommendations, etc. So we take all that data that comes into the system and we integrate it with environmental data. So not only do we have those data sets coming in, we also have a very large investment in weather science. We have a pretty big meteorology team developing our own internal meteorology models, obviously, that came out of our evolution as a weather company. Soil models, soil data sets, remote sensing. So we contract currently with 3 or 4 of the biggest satellite imagery vendors to basically be able to provide our customers with remote satellite imagery during the season. So we combine all those data sets into one big system, and what we've built is a pretty advanced geospatial data system that allows us to stack all of these layers and actually start to do analysis. Right? So we can do analysis down through layers, we can do it on a temporal basis, we can do it on a spatial basis, and we can start to quantify all the different effects of those different data sets. If you think of, so I'll use Monsanto because I know that data. So when Monsanto brings a new seed product to market, that product may be tested on, and through the course of its development, might be developed on maybe 3,000 acres, something like that. So that's actually a pretty good data set to determine the performance of a seed. But we're currently on 100 million acres footprint. And in terms of the data that we're acquiring in the next 2 years, by the end of the decade, we'll have over 1 billion data acres. So at 1 billion data acres, now I can start to do things like, okay, what's the effect of that tillage practice? What's the effect of that planter model you're running? What's the effect of seed treatments, of microbials? Obvious ones are, what's the performance of the products that you're using, right? How are your seed products performing? How are your fertility practice performing? Should you move to an all upfront fertility model to a split application? There's all these different sort of variables on how ag is done today that we can actually start to quantify once we have that sort of data set. That's climate in a nutshell. Some of the tools that we built on top of those capabilities. You see there in the top left, we have yield performance maps. What that image is showing you is in our application, you can actually pull up different data layers and start to compare. And the data layer on the left is actually the planting map. And that grower planted 2 different hybrids in that field. And what you see on the right is the yield analysis. There's another version of this slide where we have it compared to the soil types, and you can actually see there's a band of a different soil type running through that center that correlates to that poor yield area under the yield map. You can also see sort of the semicircular nature of it. It's under irrigation as well. So we can spot things. You'd be surprised at some of the things we spot, even with remote sensing. We can spot clogged nozzles on irrigators. We can spot spray applications where the vendor came out and the sprayer ran out just before they got done, and they just went home. You laugh, but you'd be surprised at how much that happens. It was funny, you know, I had a group of CIOs from various ag companies in the office last week, and we talked about some of the things that we're seeing from a data perspective and things to be aware of. And I told them, I said, be ready for a brand new era of transparency in ag. Because once we have these data sets that are coming off the equipment, there's no more pretending. You can't pretend that you did that application. The data set tells me exactly what you applied, where you applied it, and how you applied it, right? So it starts to peel back some of that mystique that we have in ag today. And I told them to get ready for it, if they're not. Yield analysis tools, so you can start to break down your yield analysis maps and get summary reports at the end of the year. You can see how different hybrids perform, different fields perform. You can break it down by soil type. A variety of different ways to break down those tools. Field health imagery, this I mentioned was our satellite image product. We're also baiting non-satellite imagery providers this summer, so your different drone and aerial imagery providers. All of it gets down to giving our customers different sets of imagery throughout the year. A new one we launched this year, advanced seeding prescriptions. You can take 2 years worth of yield data, you can take soil maps, a variety of things, and the computer will actually model out what an optimal zone-based seeding prescription is matched to your field. And it's a field-by-field basis. You can go from nothing to a full script ready to roll in about 2.5 minutes. If you compare that to how it's done today, with an agronomist sitting down with your printed book full of soil samples and printouts from last year, they spend probably 40 or 50 minutes building a script for a field, and that's sort of based on expertise and feeling. We're able to do this in under 3 minutes based on sound data science. And we're just scratching the surface, because right now the way this tool works is you can tell us the hybrids that you want to use, and we'll pull out, based on our experience, what population rates would work best in your area, your soil type, etc. Where this goes, obviously, is complete product insight. So we'll be able to recommend products across the board. People ask me this all the time. It's not just Monsanto products. We recommend, if there's a Pioneer product that tops it, we'll recommend it. We're completely unbiased. We use data to do the talking. Nitrogen modeling, this was one of our company's first innovations. We built out a proprietary process model around how nitrogen works in soil, and we're able to model it. And there's a lot of inputs into this tool. We model whether the field has drain tile or not, what your manure practice might be, what your tillage practices are, if you do a fall application, split application, what products you use. We just announced a partnership recently with Koch Industries. They make nitrate inhibitors. We use that in the model. So all of these inputs go into the model and help us sort of design what's happening with the fertility in that soil. A new feature that's about to launch for this year takes that model and extends it to a zone basis within a field. So you'll be able to take one field and break down the fertility monitoring to a zone by zone basis. As we know, fields, especially if you flew here and flew over the center of this country, you know how fields are laid out, right? They look like big blocks. Well, while the field is a block, the variability in that field is not, right? It looks like that previous picture. It's got swaths through it and different elements to it that make that field highly variable. Traditionally, though, how do we farm it? We farm it like a block, right? And then we talk about, oh, well, we average this much per acre. The reality is, when you get down to it, you can use that variability to your advantage, right? There's areas of that field which aren't that great, usually. Right? Probably shouldn't plant them at the same rate that you plant some of the areas of the ground that are really good ground, right? So we can help you tease those areas out. You can drive additional seeding rates, for example, in your good ground. You can dial back the seeding rates. Maybe you can go to a totally different product in your other ground. You might have ground that's well drained versus not well drained. You can start to use data science to build an optimal program. So where are we? I mentioned this 100 million acre footprint. We started very much in the Corn Belt of the United States to build this business. You saw Matthew's slide earlier with all the little blue dots on it. Well, that's center of the country with all those blue dots is where we started. Pretty good space if you're going to build a business to start. However, we've been expanding that ever since. We've expanded now into Canada and Brazil. We'll announce those numbers this year, but very good traction in Brazil. If you think about the problems those guys have, they have very large operations. Right? And the way they have been doing it is they run multiple combines, they get all these data files back, and then they spend the next 3 months stitching data files together to figure out what happened on that field. Our system, we took it down, we plugged it in, they had instantaneous data results, no more 3 months spent stitching data files. They didn't even care about any of the rest, honestly. They said, this is fantastic. We mentioned there was an announcement recently. We acquired a company in Estonia called Vital Fields. Vital Fields really focuses on compliance around government subsidies. So how do you keep track of everything you do on your field and make it easy to submit for your subsidies at the end of the year? It's very complementary to our approach, obviously with data. And we think when we take that drive over there, we actually already have a decent number of customers in Europe, believe it or not. They came over here to Iowa, went to the farm show, bought a drive, flew home, plugged it in, and we have data flowing from Europe already. So that's our experience there. We do testing already in Australia and New Zealand in the off season. Obviously, ag is for us here in the northern hemisphere is seasonal, so we use that to basically test multiple times a year. And we're also expanding into those markets. And 2018, 2019 we'll be expanded into Argentina and South Africa. This is basically just talks about the growth opportunities, pretty much what we just looked at actually. So we started out in corn and soy. Our footprint represents almost 50% of the U.S. corn and soy acres. We've expanded now to cover air seeders support for this year, which gets us into wheat, canola, some of those other crops, oilseed rape. Obviously, wheat's a very big one as we go into Europe as well. Typically, when we move into a new geography, we want 2 years of scientific research in that geography. We have something like 3,500 acres of internal test farms that we run our own research farms on. So we research things like the nitrogen modeling, things like that. And And then we have about another 25,000 of partner research farms who are themselves growers, but they work in concert with us to perform various research. So we don't just take a new geography lightly. We want to understand the equipment compatibility landscape. We need to understand the cropping practices. We want to have researchers on the ground conducting research, vetting our process models and things like that before we ever roll into that geography. All right. Now for the fun part for me anyway. This is my baby. So as we talk about the future of digital ag, and you're going to meet a lot of startups here this week, and what we did was we announced a shift, maybe not a shift, an expansion of our sort of path to market and how we think about our business at the end of last summer, right before Farm Progress Show, right before our big investor conference for Monsanto. And the shift of that was, can we take our success in FieldView product and expand that into what we call FieldView platform to accelerate third parties, to accelerate other investors, other startups. Let me explain a little bit what I mean by that. When we sat back and took a look at what it took to get Kleiner to where it is today, it took a substantial investment, right? Monsanto acquired for $965 million, whatever it is. Our yearly budget still continues to be substantial. We're somewhere between 600 and 700 full-time people. We've got a team of data scientists, PhDs, etc. But what really made Kleiner successful and got us over the hump was the marriage of a tech company with an industry ag company, right? The thing that unlocked success for us was Monsanto's agronomic expertise, right? You can imagine here in Silicon Valley, I mentioned I grew up on a farm. I think I'm the only one in my office with an ag background, right? So you can imagine a bunch of Silicon Valley tech people trying to make ag software, right? No slight to Silicon Valley tech people. But this is just the reality of the world, right? And Kleiner itself was guilty of this, right? Building ag software for farmers having never been on a farm, right? So it took this interesting marriage, and I mentioned that I'm sort of this interesting metaphor for Kleiner and the company with my ag background and then my experience in technology for the past 20 years, and now bringing that back into ag. That's Kleiner, right? We were a technology startup in Silicon Valley married to a traditional ag company with dealer relationships, vendor relationships, a whole lot of customers, which is always great when you're a startup, right? Salesforce, experienced individuals, right? Kleiner has its own Salesforce, but many of them came over from the Monsanto side, so they can leverage a lot of their relationships and things to help push this software. And so if you look at what's going on in AgTech, these numbers are from AgFunder. They put out a report every year on the funding that goes into the AgTech space. Last year had $3.2 billion invested, 580 deals, 10% year-over-year deal growth, even though the year before was about $4.6 billion invested, I think. So about the same percent decline as the previous slide. But I've talked to about 1,000 farmers in the past month and a half. And I always ask them, you guys feel like you got $3 billion worth of innovation on your operation last year? Yeah, they laugh. That's exactly what they did. They laugh. Because no one has seen $3 billion of innovation. I don't care who you are in ag, right? And so I just started to roughly tally, all right, well, just in the past 2 years that I've been CTO of this company, almost $8 billion has gone into innovation in this space. And if it's not showing up on the farm, where is it going? Because I can tell you, if we continue to put $8 billion every 2 years into this space and it doesn't end up on a farm, there's not going to be $8 billion going into this space, right? So I sat back and I said, well, what has Kleiner had to do? We had to build out cloud operations, right? We run a 24/7, 365 Amazon Web Service-based cloud operation to store all this data. It's not easy. We had to go through all these service integrations with existing players in the space. You have to get those meetings, build those contracts, set up those API agreements. We had to track a customer base. A little tricky in ag. You saw that slide earlier, 3% of the farms, 35% of the output. That makes for an interesting customer base. Especially when we went into corn and soy, there's probably only about maybe 200,000 corn and soy farmers in the US that really would matter to start as a business. So, you know, I told you some of my background. At Zynga, 200,000 would be a beta that would run for a week, right? 200,000 would be maybe a half hour's worth of players on a game. So much different space when it comes to digital ag and how you attract a customer base. The other problem in ag is I was struck at how similar it is to the enterprise software business I came out of from Sun. And so here in Silicon Valley, we love consumer apps, and we love agile methodology, and we love putting out features and everything. But in ag, it doesn't work that way. Ag is a seasonal business. The decisions that I make about what I'm going to do in my operation, I'm probably making them in, a lot of them I make in November, or even before that when I run harvest. At latest, I'm probably making it in December, and then my year is set. Don't come and talk to me about anything else. And we ran into this as an interesting issue. I mentioned our nitrogen model. Our researchers are continually refining that nitrogen model, right? They're continually improving it and taking the error margins out and things like that. But what do you think happens, and this happened to us, if you've got a nitrogen model that a customer has paid for and is designing their fertility program, and you release an update in June? I can tell you right now, it leads to distrust because they're not sure, right? Even though it's a better model, if you give me a different number than what you gave me back in January or February, now I don't know what's going on, right? How do I trust you? So we've had to learn that this is a different space as well. You have to create an account system. I asked growers, how many accounts do you have? Almost all growers have 4 or 5 accounts that they're managing right now. They've got us, they've got their retailer account, they probably have their Vine John Deere account if they're on there, or Case, or whatever their manufacturer is. They probably have one for their seed company, maybe their seedsman, their soil tests. I mean, the list goes on, but almost everyone is in that 4 or 5 spot. You know, it's crazy. Find a way to get paid as a startup. Where does all the money flow? Today, here in the States, it flows largely through the retail operation, right? So if you're trying to go direct, you're disrupting a model that's been in place for a very long time. Manage relationships. I mention this because every operation is basically built around a set of relationships. As a grower, I have my agronomist, I have my seedsman, I have my retailer, my dealer, etc. And I have sort of roles that each one of those relationships plays on my operation in order to get my work done. Connectivity from the field is a big one. Obviously, we run into this as we go to Brazil. We run into it in the middle of Iowa too, just not as much. The ability to upload data, analyze data. I can tell you right now, it's been about 8 months, 10 months now. We actually hired a former colleague of mine from Zynga that built out Zynga's data analytics system. At Zynga, we had the largest vertical cluster in the world doing real-time analytics. And we now have that expert, along with a team of data scientists under him, building out what if it's not already, it will be the most high-tech data analytics system in the world, for sure. Anyway, the punchline is at the bottom. It's too hard to get to market. It's too expensive, it's too slow, and it results in too much confusion and complication for the customer. Because what we realized is, all that stuff is table stakes. Every startup, every innovator in here has to go through all of that in order to get their innovation to market, for the most part. If I create a sensor and I think it'll apply to ag, what do? My expertise is in sensors. But now I got to build cloud services, I got to build connectivity, I got to figure out how to get the data off the sensor, I got to figure out how to do all this stuff, and ultimately I got to get that sensor data into some other ag system in order for it to be useful, right? So if you're wondering where all the $3 and $4 billion a year is going, it's going into a lot of frustrated startups, I can tell you. So what do we do with this once we come with the realization? Well, we announced FieldView Platform. because we actually built out all that stuff for climate as a road to success, right? And so I start with a definition because we had to redefine even the word that we used, because a lot of people in ag talk about their platform, right? Group of technologies used based upon which other applications, processes, and technologies are developed. And the key here is that it encourages third-party investment, participation, extension, innovation in a single ecosystem, right? 4 or 5 accounts, different data and different systems, not working for us, right? We know it's not working for us. That $3 and $4 billion a year is evaporating. We got to do something a little bit smarter. The vision behind FieldView platform is a digital ag ecosystem. Farmers globally can easily access a broad interconnected set of tools, service data, optimize all the systems. Basically connectivity, right? Connect all these systems, bring them together into one system, one account system. My data should flow where I want it to flow. My imagery should come in. My soil test results should come in. The data off my equipment should come in. I should be able to link in my seedsman, my agronomist, my dealer, my retailer, and we should all be able to participate in the same ecosystem, right? It doesn't mean that climate is building all this innovation. That's the other thing that we recognize. You know, whatever our R&D budget is, we're not going to be all things to all people. We're not going to build every innovation in the space. There's a lot of good innovation in the space that needs a path to market, and so what we do is we provide an acceleration, basically an avenue to bring that innovation forward, right? We've got over 100,000 customers on our platform. That's a nice customer base. You know, if you're a startup and you're trying to get to market, we have relationships with all the major retailers, dealer network. We've got sales managers in the field that talk about technology continuously. We've got a lot of good things that we've had to build and create in order to get our product to be successful, that we can now start to open up and get additional innovation into the space. And so the mission is really to accelerate the development and delivery of digital solutions for farmers by providing this common backbone, right? If you create a new sensor, great. I've got the dial tone to the field. Go out, plug it in. Not only do I give you a path and 100,000 customers that are going to start using it tomorrow, I have a place to put your data. And I have a whole team of data scientists to start evaluating it and making it useful to the grower, right? We break down platform into 4 big areas. And if you think about ag today, innovation pretty much falls into one of these. In the top right, we've got machine compatibility. I mentioned getting data off machines. We also have in-cab visualization. So you're going to see new deals come out around FieldView, FieldView ready equipment. So right from the manufacturer, tractors and machines are going to roll off FieldView ready. That means as soon as you plug in the drive, they're compatible, the data starts flowing, and you're ready to go. Now another question here, another interesting platform space here. So I asked farmers, how many more displays can we fit in our tractor cab? If you've seen a modern tractor cab, I mean, it's like flying a, I'm not sure the space capsule had as many displays as today's tractors have, right? It's getting crazy. So we've already got an iPad there. We've already got an experience the growers used to at planting, harvest, mid-season application. Why would you then go through all the expense of building a new display when you can connect to our app in the cab, visualize whatever your new controller does, and we'll stream the data into the FieldView system for you, right? We're not inventing controllers, but other companies are. If I move to the top left, I mentioned this sort of dial tone to the field connectivity. There's a lot of sensors that we have. We've got connected weather stations. We've got irrigation sensors, soil moistures. We've got sensors in our grain bins. We ourselves acquired a company last year. We're working on an in-soil nitrate sensor, right? Gives us live nitrate sensor, throughout the season. I mentioned drones. We're doing a lot with equipment-mounted cameras, actually. If you're driving through the field, by all means, put a camera on it. And we have super high-resolution imagery, right? No need to fly a drone. Robots. And people joke when I talk about this. Kleiner actually sponsors a robotic competition this year. This year is the second year we're going to be doing it. And the competition centers around a robot that can fit down a 20-inch row and it can do pest and disease identification, it can do stand count, it can do soil sensing, a whole variety of things. So there's like a dozen university teams that are building these things to compete. And we have robots in ag today, and if you don't know this space, that can identify a weed, reach out with a pair of clippers, snip it, and put 1 drop of herbicide on the stem. It's a radically different model from running a 100-foot spray boom through your field, right? You can take it a step further. Instead of putting that 1 drop of herbicide, instead of clipping it, just physically disrupt it, right? Physically disrupt the root structure of that weed. Now you're not applying the herbicide at all. So there's, while it may seem fantastic, we're not that far off. But those robots are going to need connectivity, right? They're going to need to be able to receive information about what to do. The information that they gather has to have a way to get out of the field. And you're going to see a line of field view ready sensors and gauges come up as part of this platform. In the bottom left, we look at our field view applications. A couple ways we've extended these. We have announced a partner at launch last year in Varus Technologies. Varus makes a high-definition soil scanning rig. You pull through the field and get your high-definition soil scans. The way that works today is you have an account on Varus' website. You log in, you can see your soil scans. Well, what good does your soil scan do in an account that only has soil scans? Right? You really want that information in the context of the rest of your operation, right? You want to use that for your seeding prescriptions, your zone creation. You want to layer that in with your yield maps to start to do correlations. And so the most value of a Varus soil data layer is in the context of a system like FieldView. So you have it in the context of the rest of your data layers. So we're integrating third-party data quite a bit. Another one is logging with FieldView. So I mentioned all those accounts that dealers or growers are having to manage. Logging with FieldView allows you to take your FieldView account with you. So you can use it to log into third-party systems. One account gets you access to various different service providers in the space. And the last one is actually building out an SDK to allow third-party extension of our own app. This one is obviously super hot for retailers who have some investment in digital tools that they have today, and they want to be able to plug in and ride along that same experience that we give our customers today. The bottom right there, this is sort of our traditional integration, FieldView Cloud. This is third-party B2B API-style integration where we have API agreements to pull data out of other systems. Data can leave our system and travel into other systems. It's all back-end server type stuff. So if you think about the innovation in ag, a lot of it fits into one of these 4 boxes. And we're trying to be as holistic as possible with our designer platform to bring as many of these different innovations along as we can. All right. What does it all look like? This is basically just a picture of what I just said. At the bottom, you end up with FieldView platform as a sort of common backbone. On the left, you have the area that Kleiner itself invests in. Different agronomic advisors, obviously data science-based tools, scripting, things like that. And on the right, you have areas that Kleiner has no investment in, right? We're not a drone company. We don't do satellites. We're not really a sensor company, even though we dabble in them to prove out the tech and build the infrastructure. We're obviously not an equipment manufacturer, and we don't do retail. So all of those players in this space are bringing value to the space, right? This gives everyone sort of a common platform to plug into, and it's a win for everybody. That's what's interesting about this. The grower likes it because now they get all their data in one place, and they get a single account that brings them a lot of innovation and services, right? We like it because our customers now get more services with their FieldView account that we can't invest in and develop, right? The services like it because they now have a path to market which they potentially didn't have before. If you think of drone companies for a second, drone companies acquire a few users and then have to fly a drone. And I say drone, I'll use that. Could be aircraft, could be unmanned aerial, etc. But it's expensive, right? Because you might have 10 users. Well, if I can give you 100 users for that same path, I've now created an economic model that might work for you, right? Selling imagery to people at $6 an acre or $9 an acre or some of what people are doing today is interesting for a few people. But if you can sell it for 60 cents an acre or 90 cents an acre and be profitable, now it makes sense to a whole lot more folks, right? And we get more data to drive the data science, et cetera, et cetera. I mentioned Veris. This goes live here in just next month. So you'll see Veris high definition soil scans show up directly in our Field of View products. They were our launch partner last year. Here's another example around third-party sensors, a little bit of how it works. We're experimenting with a couple of different models in talks with various communications companies that have this kind of technology, different radio networks, things like that, to figure out what that.
How do we make as a top field ready?
Yeah, Field of View ready. I'll give you. Yeah. So the question was, as a sensor company, how do we make our sensors Field of View ready? I like the way she thinks already. Just talk to me. I'll give you my card now. And some of the folks that are here are doing some of our business development deals with our different folks, and so I can put you right in touch with the right people to start working with. Yeah.
Your cloud physical location, is you think, let's say, the customer is in Australia,
Yep.
cloud location in Australia, or is it country?
So as we expand, we're looking into that. The answer is, it depends. And the reason it depends is there's a variety of things to think about. So for example, as we go into EU, we need to understand data privacy regulations, right? Do we split certain data privacy sensitive data and keep it in situ in country, and the agronomic data can go out to our main warehouse? It depends on the region, to be honest. Is the latency fast enough, et cetera, to serve it? We already do testing in Australia and everything off of our main network without any problem. So it's not like we need to recreate the whole system in every single geography that we go into. It's a little more nuanced than that. Yeah?
How much does this cost?
Good question. If there were more growers, they would have asked that way sooner. So today it's super reasonable. We're basically priced for market penetration. You can buy the drive itself for $200. You can add your entire operation in for the drive plus basic analytics for about $700. And then we have a tiered pricing structure for some of the agronomic services. So if you want advanced scripting, imagery, nitrogen analysis, things like that, there's basically a t-shirt sized farm model. Farms up to a certain number of acres are this much, et cetera, et cetera. But the top tier for the largest farm, all in, is about I think it's $5,000, just under $5,000 for your whole operation. Put that into context. When you start to look at some of the insights that the tools give you, last year we had a really wet spring in the Midwest. One farmer on one field was using the nitrogen modeler to figure out what was happening with the nitrate in his field. And the tool predicted that he needed to go out and do a side dress. And so he did, but farmers being the skeptical folks that they are, he left a test strip, which is great for us. Because 2 weeks after he applied, his test strip was yellow as that picture over there. And so at the end of the year, he ran a little bit of analysis, and he told us that on that one field, even with factoring in the cost of the additional side dress, he made just under $18,000 additional profit on that one field. So, it's early days. We've only been at this, we're going into our third season now, digital tools for farmers. They're skeptical, as they should be, but as they see the results, the proof is in the pudding. So, yeah. Varies. There's no easy answer to that. It depends. Sometimes there's a joint revenue share. Sometimes it could be just an enterprise license fee. I mean, it just depends what your model is. And so we're pretty flexible because we want to make it work for you. Yeah.
What's a billion digital acres?
A billion data acres, yeah.
So a billion, you said?
Yeah, a billion. I call it data acres. And the reason I call it data acres
that compared to?
Is depth and breadth, right? So I can tell you. I can tell you.
Analyze over an acre is 10 acres.
Right.
Okay.
That's the easiest way for me to explain it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, to me.
Yeah.
For our international visitors here, what would you say is important to know about selling to American farmers?
Oh, Okay, the question was, for our international customers here, what do I think is important to know when selling to American farmers? Boy, that's probably, I can probably make you a list. You know what? I grew up in ag, my dad is this way, I'll put it this way. Farmers want you to look them in the eye, tell them you're going to do something, and when you shake their hand, they expect you to do it. It's pretty much that simple. You want to work with American farmers? Do what you say. And charge a fair price for it. I'd say that's my best advice. Probably applies to farmers all over the world, though. I know the ones here are the best.
All right. I think we're going to have to conclude here. So thanks so much.
And before stepping into the networking portion, I just want to say to the delegates in the room that we're going to meet at 5:30 a.m. in the morning. So you're going to have to get up early in the morning, but not to say that you're not supposed to stay and get some wine afterwards, because I certainly encourage you to do that. But I at least just want to remind you. So please be on time tomorrow, because we will depart at 6 a.m. No exceptions. But yeah, proceed. There's wine, there's something to drink, and Mark will also stay here for a bit. And yeah.